This is the most popular keyboard on the internet, the Aula F75. 1 in 4 people who buy a keyboard on Amazon buy this one, and at only $79.99, it's a great price. So over the past few months, I've been testing this keyboard on and off, trying to answer the questions, why is it so dang popular? Is it really that good? And should you buy it too? And if you don't want to buy a more expensive aluminum board, does it make sense to start with something like this? An option that's a little bit cheaper and plasticky, that's been tested by thousands of other people. But I think we need to be careful when buying popular products. Sometimes the popularity is all an illusion used by companies to trick you. Imagine you had to choose between 2 keyboards. Keyboard number 1 with thousands of reviews and keyboard number 2 with 3 reviews. Which one would you pick? You would go with keyboard number 1, right? The fact that you see other people buy it makes you want to buy it too. This is something called social proof. While it's usually helpful, it can be used against you. Some brands hack social proof by reusing old product pages, running a ton of ads, or even using fake reviews written by AI. So just because something is popular doesn't mean you can automatically trust it. So can you trust the Aula F75? Let's find out. Quick note, these review units were sent to me so I could test out the product and make this video, but this video is not sponsored. So when you open the box, you get the keyboard itself, and it looks really good, actually. It comes with a 3-tone colorway, and the colors work really well together. It's a mix of white, sort of a navy color, and a light gray. The RGB is extremely bright. The case itself is plastic like you would expect, but it does have some heft to it due to a thick piece of silicone inside, which we'll look at later. On the top left, you get a slider for tri-mode wireless. So yes, you can connect this keyboard with wired Bluetooth or the wireless dongle. You get this magnetic dongle holder, which makes it hard to lose. There's a knob on the top right. It feels plasticky and a bit loose. It's not super satisfying. I give it a 3 out of 10 on the knob scale. I thought this would be for volume control, but strangely enough, this is preset to control the RGB. If you turn it, it turns the light's brightness up and down, and if you press it, it changes the preset. Upon reading the instruction manual, you can change the knob to control the volume by holding it down for 3 to 5 seconds. On the top left, you have a thin light next to the escape key, and I tried to change the color of it in the Aula software, but I wasn't able to. There's also a tiny little light next to caps lock to show if it's activated or not. On the back, there are 2 kick-up feet with multiple angles and 4 rubber feet, so you can adjust your typing angle. In the box, you get a few items, such as this desk cover, which I personally never use. You also get a keycap and switch puller combo, which is nice if you want to do some light modding, but for the switch puller, I'd recommend a better one, like this one. You also get a gray cable that's sort of cheap feeling. I would have liked to see a braided cable, but it gets a pass since it is a budget board after all. And then finally, you get 2 extra switches. We'll be comparing all of the switch options later on. So the Aula F75 comes in 7 different color options with more selection than most custom keyboards. Pretty crazy for an $80 keyboard. This is the light blue variant, which is my favorite colorway and is the most popular version of the keyboard by far. You can also get the Aula in a 98% layout with a number pad. You can get it in 10 keyless or 75% or even 65% without the function row. So you can pick depending on what size keyboard you want. If you're not sure what size to buy, I recommend going for a larger, safe option. You don't want to pay for a keyboard that's too small just for it to be a useless paperweight you stick on your shelf later on. You also get 4 switch options, which we'll talk about more soon. So how does it feel to use the Aula F75? The keyboard is gasket mounted, which makes your keyboard feel softer and sound better. And just pressing on the keyboard here, it has a ton of give. Like you can really push it down. But there's something off about this gasket mount. It feels really uneven depending on where you press. The middle of the keyboard goes down super far, while the sides and corners barely move. This can lead to a strange typing experience as each key feels different than the rest. It really starts to bug you later on. For example, the A key feels much stiffer than the H key, and once you notice it, it's hard to pretend it's not there. Slowly, over time, it'll get under your skin and can drive you crazy. This has to do with something called flex cuts, which we'll look at when we do a full teardown later. The keycaps on the Ally F75 are PBT double shot, which means they won't leave any greasy marks from your fingers when you're typing. And they also have 2 layers of plastic, one for the legend and the other for the rest of the keycap. But if you look closer, something is off about these keycaps. The modifier keys have small errors on the text. The E is a completely different font, and the dot above the I is way too thick. The sizing and spacing of the font is super inconsistent, but I guess that's what you expect for this price. For most, this is a minor detail, but I feel like it would drive me crazy knowing these keys are messed up. But then, if you take a keycap off, sometimes the stabilizer will pop out too. That's not good. Luckily, we can just pop that right back in. The stabilizers themselves actually feel really well tuned and stable when they're not falling out, of course. They're also lubed to have 0 rattle. Pretty smooth. Now, looking at the switch options, you get 4 options. The Leobog Reapers, Leobog Ice Veins, Leobog Greywood V3s, and the TTC Crescent switch. I've heard a lot of good things about Leobog, so it's nice to finally test them out. And Leobog just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? Leobog. But what's strange is that these are all linear switches. There's no tactile or clicky options. Linear switches have a smooth up and down feel with no bump or click noise. They're also all pre-lubed, which makes them feel smoother and have less ping, which is nice to see. Now in 2024, pretty much every linear switch is pre-lubed. So what's the difference between each switch? Well, they all sound and feel slightly different because of the spring weights and the type of plastic used. If I had to rank them, I'd put the Leobog Reapers in first place. They have a super satisfying bottom out due to the palm plastic design, and it produces a nice mix of creamy and thocky as far as the sound goes. In a close second, I put the Leobog Ice Veins. They have more of a creamy sound with less thock. And tied for third is the Leobog Greywoods and TTC Crescent switches. They sound way clackier and the bottom out feels more hollow and less satisfying. Here is all 4 switches back to back, so you can decide which one is your favorite. I have to say, they all sound really good, especially the Leobog Reapers. But which one is your favorite? Let's see what makes this keyboard sound so good. It's time for the teardown! After you snap off the top, you can see the plate and PCB assembly along with the gasket mount. There's also ribbon cables everywhere. Make sure not to break them. And on the back, you have this piece of foam adhered to the PCB. The plate itself is polycarbonate plastic and is extremely flexible. This explains why the stabilizers were basically falling out earlier. The plate doesn't exactly hold them in, and the plate has flex cuts everywhere to make it even more flexible. That's why certain keys feel softer than others. Now the gaskets on this board are pretty interesting. They are stretchy, removable silicone gaskets, and it's nice that they're removable unlike other keyboards I've seen. Just be careful not to break them or lose them. Between the plate and the PCB are not 1, not 2, but 3 layers of stuff. You have this really stretchy and squishy pour-on foam that helps dampen unwanted noises, along with an IXPE switch pad, which is thinner and less stretchy, and the plastic PET sheet to protect the PCB from damage and boost the sound. Under the PCB, you have 2 more layers of foam. There's pour-on foam that's adhered to the back of the PCB, and you can slowly remove this without tearing it if you wanted to. And at the very bottom is a thick layer of poured silicone, and this thing is dang heavy too. It must be what makes the Ally F75 feel so heavy compared to other keyboards. And then under the spacebar are these 2 little pieces of foam that help improve the sound of the spacebar. So all in all, you have a grand total of 5 layers of foam. home, which is pretty crazy when you look at how affordable this keyboard is. Then if you look at the PCB, there are flex cuts everywhere too. This keyboard has flex cuts on top of flex cuts. Crazy. Now the Owla F75 unfortunately doesn't work with VIA, which is a browser-based software you can use to remap the keys and program your lighting. Instead, you have to download the software. The screen for the software is so unbelievably tiny, it's hard to see anything, yet alone actually use it. This is literally the biggest that I can make the screen, and I felt like an old lady trying to see everything. I would say it's almost unusable. Although you can set RGB settings or remap keys, it'll just take you 20 minutes to figure out how to use it. It's just not that intuitive. So how does the F75 compare to another more expensive product like the Brydge 75 or the Rany 75? Sure, they cost a bit more, but the quality improvement feels huge when you reach this $100 price point. You get a full aluminum board that feels more premium, and you often get some nice details like this backplate and more. Plus, they come compatible with VIA. It's so much easier to use. But honestly, if this is your first time buying a keyboard and you don't want to dump too much money on this hobby, the Owla F75 is a great keyboard to start with. I think this thing sounds just as good as a Rany 75. And then if you like it, maybe look out at trying an aluminum board later on. So besides a few small issues like the keycap fonts, the uneven gasket mount, and a lack of good software, this keyboard is really dang good for the price. Now, if you're looking for a great keyboard for $100, check out this video here. It has a Rany 75 in it.